Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Todd Barron, and I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist of the National Weather Service in Huntsville, Alabama. Today's presentation will briefly cover severe weather impacts of the Tennessee Valley, as well as highlight some safety topics. Before we get started here, let's take a brief moment and think about the flow of information and communication. How do we get from these blobs of colors in these two images to you making a life-saving decision? It's going to start with accurate forecasting from a wide array of atmospheric observations that feed into our weather models. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Our forecasts then have to be communicated effectively to our stakeholders, including emergency management and the local media, which will then be picked up by you. What you do with that information and the actions subsequently taken are entirely up to you. Let's briefly talk about the National Weather Service. The National Weather Service is part of the federal government. We are housed under the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is within the Department of Commerce. The National Weather Service houses several national centers, including the National Hurricane Center in Miami, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, and several river forecast centers, as well as our 122 local weather forecast offices. And our mission here at the National Weather Service is to issue warnings for hazardous weather for the protection of life and property. So the National Weather Service in Huntsville is located on the campus of the University of Alabama Huntsville at the National Space Science and Technology Center. We have 22 employees, 17 of which are degreed meteorologists. We never close because weather never stops. If you have a question at 3 a.m. on Christmas Day, someone will be there to pick up the phone and answer your question. Our area of responsibility, or county warning area, includes 11 counties in northern Alabama and 3 counties in southern Middle Tennessee. We are responsible for the daily forecast and issuing warnings for severe weather in these particular counties. So if you live in one of those 14 counties, you probably have heard or seen some of the warnings scroll across your TV. While we are not responsible for the scroll display on your TV, we are responsible for issuing those messages, and they do originate from the National Weather Service Huntsville. Hopefully you own the NOAA Weather Radio. All those forecasts that are broadcast on the NOAA Weather Radio, as well as the weather alerts, originate from the National Weather Service in Huntsville as well. All of those warning messages can quickly become misconstrued after it leaves our office. However, the National Weather Service works hard to prevent this. We are part of a team consisting of emergency managers and the weather and climate industry, such as our local media, private companies, etc., that work closely together to promote a unified message. If we are all communicating a clear and consistent message to our stakeholders, the general public will receive the correct information regarding the timing and impact and better prepare for the event. So now let's switch gears here and talk a little on the forecasting process. How do we go from observing the atmosphere from space to you taking the appropriate action during severe weather? As I mentioned earlier, observations are the key to making a good forecast. Collecting good information at the present will lead to a better forecast, whether it be an hour or 7 days out. So we'll try and collect the best possible samples from the current state of the atmosphere. We can fly planes through hurricanes, collect real-time data from space from our satellites. We'll send weather balloons up across the world multiple times per day, record observations from our automated weather sensing ground equipment and equipment at sea. We can dissect storms with our Doppler radars, and harness the services of our academia partners. All that information of what's going on right now will be loaded into our supercomputers that will run weather models on a local, regional, national, and global scale to give us an idea of what weather could be heading our way. We'll use the models, add our expertise to them, and develop a forecast that is easy to understand. When it comes to severe weather, the National Weather Service local offices will collaborate with the Storm Prediction Center, or SPC, in Norman, Oklahoma, to determine what areas are at the greatest risk for severe weather. SPC is responsible for developing the outlooks for severe weather and provides a mesoscale forecast or storm scale forecasts. They are also responsible for creating the tornado and severe thunderstorm watches after collaboration with the impacted local National Weather Service offices. SPC, much like the National Hurricane Center, generally operate by looking at a bigger picture to determine what regions of the country will be impacted by a particular storm system. So you've probably seen their graphics, which highlight different threat levels for a single event. Along with the overall threat forecast, SPC will forecast a probability of damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. Just to be clear, these graphics do not always correlate directly to a tornado threat. You could be in a moderate risk area with a low probability of tornadoes, but a high chance of experiencing hail or damaging winds. So speaking of those terms and colors, here is what each color threat means. For severe storm potential, it basically goes from this darker green shade, which highlights the potential for an isolated low-end severe storm to form with a low tornado risk, to this pink area, which corresponds to widespread severe thunderstorms with a risk of a tornado outbreak or a derecho event taking place. Take a moment to read over this chart so that you understand the SPC convective outlook colors. Once severe weather is anticipated for a certain day, the Storm Prediction Center will issue either a severe thunderstorm or tornado watch. Watches are much larger than warnings and usually cover a handful of counties, possibly over a couple states. A watch means that the atmosphere is conducive for severe weather, usually within the 46-hour time frame. A watch does not mean that severe weather is currently ongoing. Once a severe thunderstorm or tornado is detected, the local National Weather Service office will issue a warning. A warning, which ranges in size from a portion of a county to a couple counties, means that severe weather is happening now or will happen shortly. Take immediate action once a warning is issued. The role of your National Weather Service is very important. In addition to the collaboration with the Storm Prediction Center, we will take what the big picture is showing us and localize it using our expertise. After analyzing models, observations, and various other data sets, we'll develop an idea of specific impacts, where they will likely occur, and at what times. From there, and one of the most important parts of our job is to effectively communicate that forecast to emergency managers, local officials, and the general public. Accurate, timely, and easy to understand information helps the public make the best decisions. So now we know how the forecast process generally works. Let's talk about a few specific impacts and discuss some safety measures to keep in mind. In the upcoming slides, I'll be focusing on flooding, severe thunderstorms, and tornadoes.
You're running late, and your path is blocked by water crossing the road. It doesn't look that deep, so you decide to drive through. Bad decision. And it may be your last.
The takeaway is simple. Do not attempt to drive over a flooded roadway. It only takes around 6 inches of flowing water to knock over an adult, around 12 inches to make a small car buoyant, and about 24 inches to take away most vehicles. The message we promote here at the National Weather Service is turn around, don't drown. Safety measures for flash flooding sounds fairly simple. Move to higher ground, and don't attempt to drive through flooded roadways. The big thing with roadways is that you do not know if a section of the road or a bridge is washed out. So check out this next video. Also, do not be like this person. Very bad idea. However, in the long version of this video, the driver is able to exit the car and walk to the other side. So while the water may only be a couple feet deep, it shows you the power of rushing water and how easy it can be to carry away your car.
Ándale, ándale, llévatelo, llévatelo. Dale, vámonos. Ya va. Call 911, hurry! Call 911!
Let's discuss a couple definitions regarding floods. First, you may see a flood advisory that has been issued for your area. More often than not, this type of flooding is more nuisance flooding associated with low-lying or poor drainage areas. You might see sections of roads closed or parking lots closed to the standing high water. A flood watch will be issued when conditions are favorable for flooding. Much like a tornado watch, a flood watch does not always mean that flooding is currently happening. It means that conditions are favorable or will become favorable for flooding. And finally, if a flash flood warning is issued for your area, take action. Flash flooding is a rapid rise in moving water that can be life-threatening. So let's move to our next topic of severe thunderstorms. Any storm we classify as severe has to have at least one of these features: hail 1 inch or quarter sized or greater in diameter, winds of at least 58 miles per hour, and or a tornado. For hail, the 1 inch criteria corresponds to the size that impacts general safety and agriculture. Once winds approach 58 miles an hour, we'll start seeing damage to small trees being uprooted or large branches being knocked down. Keep in mind too that thunderstorm winds or microburst winds can be very intense at times and can reach wind speeds comparable to an EF2 tornado. So please do not take a severe thunderstorm lightly. Springtime in the Tennessee Valley is notorious for our peak in tornadoes, but the tornado risk begins to lower as we head into the summer. However, even though our tornado threat might be lower, we will still have the threat of severe thunderstorms through the year, with the peak in the spring and summer months. Please remember never to take a severe thunderstorm warning lightly. Severe thunderstorms come with multiple hazards, including large hail, deadly, frequent lightning, and damaging winds, sometimes approaching EF2 tornado strength. The best thunderstorm safety advice is to find and stay inside a sturdy shelter until the storm has passed. Here are some examples of good and bad shelters. Good shelters will include your sturdy house and buildings. Please remember to stay away from windows, as large hailstones or falling tree limbs can easily break them. Bad shelters include dugouts, boats on the water with no cabin, soft top convertible cars and convertibles with their tops down, and under trees. So how do vehicles typically hold up after taking a direct lightning strike? Well, the vehicle itself might experience some damage, especially to the electronics. As long as the windows are up and no one is touching anything metal inside, the occupants will be unharmed. The lightning will not puncture a vehicle. Instead, it'll travel from the top of the metal framing, around the sides, and disperse towards the ground. The best piece of lightning advice I can offer you is when thunder roars, go indoors. Make sure you cease all outdoor activities, seek a suitable shelter, and wait 30 minutes until after the storm has passed to resume activities. Hail, which is basically chunks of ice falling from a thunderstorm, can be damaging to property and cause serious injury in some cases. Hail safety is similar to lightning and wind safety. Find a shelter and stay inside. If you have time before the storm, make sure your windows are closed, and if you have blinds or drapes, close them too. That will help limit the amount of glass that could potentially shatter inwards. As we saw in the video, cars are not safe places to shelter during large hail events. Damaging straight-line winds or microburst winds can be just as damaging as a tornado approaching EF2 strength. This is a video of some very strong microburst winds from a severe thunderstorm in New Jersey from a few years back. Once winds hit 70, 80, 90 miles an hour, we'll start seeing significant tree damage, roof damage, and power line damage. The big takeaway again is to not take a severe thunderstorm warning lightly. There's multiple hazards associated with severe thunderstorms that could have a direct impact to life and property. So now we'll move on to our final topic of tornado safety. While this chart is a couple years old, it does depict well our climatological peaks in tornadic storms. March through May here in the Tennessee Valley are our months of concern for tornadoes. After the spring, however, our tornado impact significantly drops off. But that does not mean we'll have a 0% chance of a tornado in the summer, just a lower likelihood from a historical perspective. So keep that in mind too. While our tornado risk does drop off in the summertime, our severe thunderstorm risk remains quite high. As we move through the year, we'll start to see a secondary peak beginning in the October-November time range as more potent cold fronts begin to move into the southeast. We'll use what we call the enhanced Fujita scale to classify tornado intensity based off the amount of damage. The range goes from EF0, starting at 65 miles an hour, which will cause some tree damage or blow some shingles off a roof, and it goes all the way up to EF5, with winds over 200 miles an hour, which is characterized as catastrophic damage or total destruction of buildings.
House is getting destroyed.
So this video was shot a few years ago in Oklahoma. First thing I want to point out, safety-wise, is that we are way too close to this tornado. If debris is that close to you, you are in danger.
Get out your window, get out your window. Now, relax. I am. Watch behind you, Cole. You're good. Don't touch it. Tampa. Oh my God. Back up.
The next thing to point out after the tornado hits the shed or barn is the lower left side of the tornado. A small mobile home is launched into the air.
Brandon, back. Oh, it's a trailer house. Slow down, Bernie.
This shows you the danger and vulnerability of mobile homes during tornadoes. If you know tornadoes are possible on that particular day and are in a mobile home, seek out a more suitable shelter. Nocturnal tornadoes are our most dangerous and deadly tornadoes. Basically, you cannot see them coming. Or you might be asleep and not get the warning message unless you have a weather radio, a weather app that notifies you of warnings, or if you have live TV or your radio on.
Yeah, it's right behind the school.
So can you spot this tornado in the video? Unless there's lightning or a power surge, you won't be able to see the tornado. So because of the added dangers, recreational mobile spotting is not encouraged. In the southeast, there's an unofficial term called Dixie Alley. Now, most of us know about Tornado Alley that stretches from Texas into the upper plains. Tornado Alley will typically see a higher frequency of tornadoes compared to anywhere else in the country. However, Dixie Alley in the southeast will usually have a higher frequency of deadly tornadoes. This is theorized because the amount of nocturnal tornadoes, higher population, or other obstructions like high precipitation that lead to rain-wrapped tornadoes, or topography blocks the features of a particular storm. When you must take action after a tornado warning is issued, here are some sheltering options. Underground shelters, basements, or a severe weather safe room are one of the best options. Another good option and rule of thumb is to put as many walls between you and the outside world as possible. This means an interior bathroom, a closet, or underneath the staircase. Evacuate mobile homes well in advance if you can. If you're caught outside and there is absolutely no options available of finding a shelter, try and lay flat in the ditch. This is definitely not an ideal situation. And finally, do not try and outdrive a tornado. If you can pull over and get into a shelter, do that because tornadoes can meander along a path and can be very fast moving. So once you're in your shelter, get in, get down, and cover up. Below ground is one of the top options. If you have a below ground shelter and your area offers it, register your below ground shelter with the county so they know to come find you if your house is collapsed on your shelter door. Safe rooms are excellent options too, and FEMA has guidelines about installing an effective safe room. So what if you're in your car? Well, don't be in your car. Avoid the tornado if you can and find a real shelter. You might have to make a tough decision, but try not to make the wrong one. Do you stay in your car? Do you get in a ditch? Do you get under an overpass? So let's quickly discuss some of these options. Is it vulnerable to tornadoes? Yes, you bet it is. And here's what it looked like after the violent Phil Campbell, Alabama tornado hit it. So cars are not the ideal options to seek shelter in. Nor is an overpass. Overpasses can actually significantly increase the winds of a tornado if it were to pass through the overpass. Winds funneled in a confined area increase in accordance with the principal mass of continuity as described by the Venturi effect. While the overpasses can protect you from hail or debris at times, you or your car will not be able to hold on or stay under the overpass if a tornado were to cross it. Keep in mind too that no two tornadoes are the same. The video on the left here shows a smaller but very fast moving EF2 tornado that quickly flips over some cars. The video on the right depicts a large wedge type violent tornado. If you're trying to identify a tornado from an ominous looking cloud, a rule of thumb is to look for some significant rotation. If the cloud is stagnant with zero rotation, it's likely a scud cloud. Scud clouds are fractions of other clouds that are being sucked up by the inflow of the storm. This is why those clouds can get that more vertical appearance, like in these two images. So what about this image? Scud clouds or a raggedy tornado? This is low-hanging scud clouds with a terrain effect. Note the ragged, non-funnel appearance. And these are some of the most dramatic tornado look-alike photos that we've seen. The cloud formations appear like they extend from the cloud base to the ground. It would be extremely difficult not to think this was a tornado. A few minutes in time and careful observation indicate that these features, which looks like a tornado, is not rotating. No rotation, no tornado. Pictures can be deceiving at times, but a video can help. Keep in mind that a tornado is defined as a violently rotating column of air that extends from the cloud base to the ground. If you see a feature like in this picture where you have a funnel cloud extending from a cloud base, try and look towards the ground and look for any swirls. If you see a swirl of dirt, then you know the tornado is actually on the ground, but the condensation funnel has yet to reach the cloud base level. In this example, in this image, we see the condensation funnel from the cloud, but no swirl or indication that it's actually on the ground. So we know this is simply a funnel cloud. When reporting severe weather to the National Weather Service, we would like you to use the TELL method, or time, event, location. Here's an example of a great report. At 4:05 p.m., I drove through golf ball size hail 2 miles north of Coleman on Highway 31. We know your time, 4:05 p.m., the event, golf ball size hail, and your location, 2 miles north of Coleman on Highway 31. From that, we can find the storm that produced this hail, verify any warnings we may have had out, and alert folks in the path of this storm. To pass along a report to the National Weather Service in Huntsville, you can dial this number here. Finally, it's highly recommended that you have some sort of severe weather kit in your workplace or house. Visit ready.gov/kit for detailed information about putting together a survival kit. You'll want to have items such as food, water, medicine, batteries, a radio, a weather radio, a generator, extra shoes, a cell phone, ID, etc. So be sure to test your severe weather plan and know where your safe room is. And stay up to date with the latest weather information from the National Weather Service or from your local media source. And be sure to have a plan for your pets, elderly, and disabled. Finally, the National Weather Service can provide you with a great forecast and may give you plenty of lead time, but it's up to you to take action, and it's up to you to have a plan in place that works. Some advice after the storm passes: try and keep everyone in one place and wait for emergency personnel. Watch for dangers from broken glass or nails. Don't light any matches or lighters because there could be ruptured gas lines. Try and remain calm. Stay away from damaged structures and stay away from downed power lines. Finally, the National Weather Service has a program called Weather Ready Nation Ambassadors, and we're always looking for new ambassadors. Potential ambassadors are groups or organizations that have some sort of following or an audience and can relay weather information and preparedness information to that audience. It's quick and easy to sign up. Just go to noaa.gov/WRN. Some examples of Weather Ready Nation ambassadors include churches, HOAs, businesses, organizations across all levels of government, media, schools, etc. So that will conclude today's presentation. Thank you for listening and have a great day.